people are doing. Just to say some things about this idea. So basically the livable income guarantee is an adequate income paid, and we're proposing at the rate of the current age pension. It's an opt-in payment where people are eligible based on that they have not have an adequate market income, that they are undertaking activities that contribute towards society, and people are over the age of 16 years of age. So it is available to migrants, particularly informal migrants, something that people have been sort of cut out of up until this point. Payments are made to individuals, and couples receive a lower amount based on shared living costs. And to mitigate the burden that single parents, who are usually women, have in raising dependents on a single payment, the livable income guarantee should be accompanied by family tax benefits, rental assistance, and other payments. So we definitely don't see it as a standalone payment, that very much there's other payments that need to accompany the livable income guarantee. So there are many activities that we are considering as important social contributions that should be counted as an eligibility criteria for receiving the livable income guarantee. There are many here, and I'm curious to hear your sort of thoughts about this, about what should be included here. But the kinds of ideas that we're sort of thinking about is, of course, care of children, care of elderly, and other care work that's currently unpaid. You know, work that would be considered as volunteering, supporting organisations and causes. It might include firefighting, surf lifesaving, you know, the important work that underpins women's refuges, and other kinds of important work. Work on grant-funded community projects, support for starting small businesses, ecological care projects, the work that people do to look after country and the ecology more broadly, artistic and creative activity, and full-time study. So the point of these contributions is that people are already doing such activities. So our sort of thinking is, and I'll come back to this a little bit, is that the whole idea underpinning the LIG is it's one based on trust, not deficit, which is very much the current sort of status quo. So we do see that people are already doing work, and you know, this whole sort of discourse around people, if you don't have a formal job, you just sit at home watching Netflix, we reject that. People are very productive, and so what we see is that this is not about just creating make work punitive conditionality, that the activities that we're sort of thinking here are already undertaken by most people. The two can be chosen by people themselves. So there is a value to this work for the people that are undertaking it, and that they have a social contribution. So whilst they may not be valued in the market economy, they still have extremely important value in the moral economy and the social reproductive economy. So we're seeing, you know, we're really trying to challenge this idea that that, you know, work is formal employment. We're really trying to break down that idea particularly, and see that as a really important contribution that the LIG is doing. So really destabilizing this sort of, you know, this idea of wage labour as the only form of work. And as I made in my opening comments, that, you know, I really appreciate that now, particularly having a baby, the amount of care work that goes on. So, I mean, we're not saying that the LIG can ever pay for all of the contributions that people make, but at least it provides people an adequate income and does not attack people in terms of the way that we see in the current welfare system, where, you know, things like Parents Next and Work for the Dole really goes towards attacking the work that people are doing, whereas the LIG does something completely different. We also see the livable income guarantee as a way to integrate or further integrate the tax and welfare systems with respect to how people are participating through their chosen activity. So currently the welfare system starts from the assumption that people are cheats and imposes harsh compliance rules that surveil and manage recipients. By contrast, the tax system operates on the basis of trust and self-assessment. So the taxpayer declares, you know, your tax, and you may be audited, but the whole sort of system is based on trust. So we're trying to, we're flipping that, well, we're changing the welfare component of that to be also based on trust. So our proposal is that the livable income guarantee should operate in a similar way as the tax system, where people can submit their own participation declarations, as some people do with their tax returns. We don't see a role for the job network set up under Howard as he privatised employment services. So instead, we have various payments alongside the livable income guarantee that will help communities, individuals and people to mobilise their own community initiatives. So we are trying to move away from that sort of checks and balances that people are doing work. And so there's an important additional payment around sort of grants, community grants that are available for groups and people and organisations to mobilise to further support the work that they're already doing. So, you know, money for artists to do some creative piece, you know, bands to write music, community support groups to operate even further. I mean, a piece of research that I've been doing is working with women that have been put on Parents Next. So this is the punitive conditional program. That's sort of assuming that mums, and particularly single mums, aren't doing much and need, you know, intervention to get them into the workforce. The research, well, I mean, it doesn't come as much of a surprise. People are, of course, extremely productive. They're looking after their kids, often alone, but also doing lots of work in the community. And one woman that I've been working with, she runs a women's refuge crisis sort of community group. You know, so this stuff is super important, has huge social value and productive value, economic value in supporting people. And so, you know, we see these community grants as being really important in further supporting the work that people are already doing. There are some other payments there too that we've listed, which I think are really quite, I think, are interesting. I mean, there's rental assistance and family tax benefits, which, you know, and disability payments, which of course would need to stay. But the other payment that we've also listed and there is something we've called reparative payments. So this is to First Nations people. It's not a reparation, as it can't be, nothing, what's been taken can never be repaid. And so we're not trying to say that. But it's an idea that's taken from the movement for Black Lives, where so they've got various policy platforms, but in their reparations platform, they have this idea of universal plus basic income. So, you know, they're advocating for a basic income for all of America, but if you're a person of color, then you get a plus. to acknowledge the structural disadvantage. Now, our sort of thinking is sort of along those lines, where whilst everyone has a rightful share to wealth and a right for economic security, it's an acknowledgement that more has been taken from First Nations people, that we are foundationally on stolen land. That was the sort of what was the foundational violence of the country, and so therefore this is an acknowledgement of the role of social policy in that, but also that what has been taken. So it's not to repay. It can never repay, but to acknowledge and to work in the spirit of truth telling in that direction. So that's also there too. So I'm definitely curious on for people's thoughts on that.